He stared at the phone screen, the word Oswin blinking next to the incoming call icon. His thumb hovered over the green button, a single bead of sweat tracing a path down his palm. He knew what this call was about, what it had to be about. Christmas. He had to know if he was going home. He'd been working 2 jobs all year, saving every dime, waiting for this. It was supposed to be the first Christmas in years that he could actually buy them something nice, a proper gift, not just a small token to hide his shame at being broke. But the phone call, the one he had been so eagerly anticipating, ended his hope in an instant. The line connected, a single cold sentence leaving Oswin's lips. "I wasn't expecting you to come home this year, Jareth." It was said so casually, as if Jareth was an afterthought, an inconvenience he had forgotten to account for. Jareth's hand started to tremble, and a cold, sharp ache blossomed in his chest. In that moment a switch flipped. All the love, all the respect he had for the man who had raised him, it all turned to ash. His thumb, still trembling, didn't dial a number or send a text. It opened a banking app, then a different account. He wasn't giving them a Christmas gift, he was taking one back. What he did next was irreversible. The Christmas before, the air in the house had felt heavy with a kind of quiet joy that only comes from a family trying to pretend everything is fine. The fake tree stood in the corner, its plastic branches already drooping from the weight of too many cheap ornaments. Mum, Maribel, was humming a song under her breath as she pulled a pan of cookies from the oven, the smell of cinnamon and sugar filling the small house on the edge of town. Oswin, my stepfather, was in his easy chair, pretending to read the newspaper, but his eyes kept flicking over to the television, the sound turned down low. We were all acting out a scene we'd been rehearsing for years, the perfect little family unit. We were good at it, so good that sometimes I even believed it. I was home from my first year out of high school, trying to find my footing, and the silence, the simple normalcy of it all was a gift. The reality, though, was always lurking just beneath the surface. I knew the cracks. I'd seen them appear over the years, small at first, like hairline fractures in a glass, and now they were wide enough to let the cold in. I was saving money from my shifts at the gas station, every dollar going into an account to get me out of here. Not that I didn't love my mum. I did. More than anything, but I saw the way her face tightened whenever Oswin said they couldn't afford something. He had a way of making it sound like it was an outside force, a recession or a bad market, never anything he had done. He was a good man, or so I told myself. He had been a mechanic for 25 years, and he had worked his way up to owning his own small shop. It was a point of pride for him. The shop, however, was in a bad part of town, and the customer base was shrinking. But Oswin always insisted it would turn around. He had a plan, he said. He was going to put the business in a trust fund and sell it when he retired in a few years, and they would be set for life. It was a grand, beautiful plan that I had no reason to doubt. "Jareth, honey, can you help me with this?" Mum's voice broke through my thoughts. I went into the kitchen. She was struggling to lift a heavy cast iron pan. I took it from her, the warmth radiating from the metal. "Thanks, honey, you've gotten so strong." She smiled at me, a real smile this time, not the strained one she used around Oswin. I saw the lines of worry etched around her eyes, a roadmap of the sacrifices she had made. She'd given everything for me. And then for Oswin, I wanted to give something back, something that wasn't just a physical gift, but a piece of my own security. I had been planning to use a chunk of my savings to help them out, maybe fix the leaky roof, or replace the broken-down dryer. I wanted to show them I was a man now, that I could provide. Oswin came into the kitchen, his voice boisterous, a little too loud for the small room. He wrapped an arm around Maribel, a theatrical show of affection. "What's my favorite family up to? Don't you worry about a thing, Jareth. Everything's going to be fine. I've got us all taken care of." He gave her a long kiss on the cheek, and she giggled, a girlish sound she hadn't made in a long time. It was a good moment, a snapshot of the family I wanted to have, the family I was trying to save. I watched him, this man who had stepped in and tried to be a father to me when my own had died. I respected him. I believed in his plan. I believed he had our best interests at heart. Later that night, after my mom had gone to bed, Oswin and I sat in the living room. The lights from the tree were the only thing illuminating the room. "You know, Jareth, I've been thinking," he said, his voice low and serious. "Your mom and I were talking. We think it's time to start planning for the future. You're a man now. You have a right to know what's going on." He reached into his wallet and pulled out a small, folded piece of paper. He handed it to me. It was an investment portfolio statement. I stared at the numbers, the tidy sums of money, the retirement fund. It was big. It was impressive. "That's what's going to get us through," he said. "That's what's going to make sure your mother is taken care of. Don't you ever think for a second that I don't love your mother. I'm doing this for her." The last sentence felt like a warning more than a declaration. He wanted me to see the money, to see his sacrifice, but he also wanted to make sure I knew it was his. He wanted my respect, and I gave it to him. We talked for a long time about my jobs, about his work, about the future. He spoke with such confidence, such certainty, that any doubts I had about the subtle tension in the house dissolved. This was a man with a plan, a man who would take care of his family. He showed me the paperwork, the legal documents for the business trust. It was all there, spelled out in black and white. He was a good stepfather. He was a good man. I left the house that night feeling a profound sense of peace. I was part of a family with a future. We were going to be okay. I didn't know it then, but this was the last time I would ever feel that way. The text message came a few weeks later. It was a picture of a brand new work van. It was a big white Ford Transit with a custom wrap that had Oswin's Mechanic Shop logo plastered on the side in bold red letters. The van was spotless, gleaming in the harsh afternoon sunlight. It was a real professional vehicle, a far cry from the rust-eaten Ford Econoline he had been driving for years. The caption underneath the photo was simple: "Got a new ride. Business is booming." I felt a swell of pride in my chest. This was it. This was the plan coming to life. Oswin was making it work. He was growing the business, providing for my mom, and making good on all the promises he'd ever made to me. I immediately texted him back, a flood of emojis and excited congratulations. He replied with a single thumbs-up emoji. The pride I felt for him was genuine, and for a fleeting moment I was happy. I called my mom to ask her about it. She sounded surprised. "Oh, the van?" He told me he was just going to lease it for a little while, to see how it went. I didn't know he'd actually bought one. Her voice was laced with a strange, nervous energy. She was trying to sound happy, but I could hear the hesitation, the quiet fear in her tone. My chest tightened. "It's a big deal, Mom," I said, trying to sound encouraging. "It means things are going well, right? He's expanding." There was a long silence on the other end of the line. I heard her sigh. It was a deep, tired sound that spoke volumes. "Yeah, honey. I guess so." He said it was an investment. The word investment felt wrong, a hollow echo of the word Oswin had used to describe the retirement fund, the savings account. I pushed the feeling down. I didn't want to believe that something was wrong. I wanted to believe in the family I thought I had, the future I thought was ours. A few days later I drove out to see them. I wanted to see the van in person, to feel the newness of it, to believe in the success it represented. When I got there, Oswin was polishing the side of it, a satisfied look on his face. He beamed when he saw me. "Jareth, come check this out. It's a game changer. I've got all the new equipment loaded in the back, a brand new toolbox, a lift. I've got everything I need to get new clients, to really make a name for myself. This is what's going to make the retirement fund grow even faster. This is what's going to get us all out of this." You see, he was so excited, so full of energy, that I almost forgot my mom's quiet fear on the phone. He was a salesman, a showman. He had an infectious confidence that made you want to believe him. He showed me every detail, from the new tires to the custom shelving inside. The inside of the van was immaculate, a testament to his ambition. But as I ran my hand over the polished metal of the new toolbox, I noticed a strange logo etched into the side. It wasn't a brand I recognized. It looked custom, expensive. I asked him about it. He laughed, a little too loudly. "Oh, that's just a little something I picked up from a friend. A good deal. Had to jump on it, you know." He didn't meet my eyes. He was too busy wiping a speck of dust from the side of the van. The moment passed, and I didn't push it. I didn't want to ruin his moment of victory, but the seed of doubt had been planted. It was a small thing, a tiny, almost imperceptible detail, but it was enough to make my stomach churn with unease. That night, my mom pulled me aside after Oswin had gone to bed. She was crying. She held a stack of bills in her hand. "I don't know what's going on, Jareth. The money's just disappearing. I paid the electricity bill, but then I got a notice that they were going to shut it off. Our savings account is almost empty. I don't understand. Oswin just keeps saying he's got it, that it's all part of the plan, but I'm scared." Her voice was a terrified whisper, She was terrified of him and of what he was doing. I hugged her tight, the feel of her trembling body against mine. She was hiding this from him, from me, trying to hold on to a secret she couldn't bear to tell. I felt a cold dread settle in my bones. Something was wrong, and I was about to find out exactly what it was. The call from my mother came a week later, and her voice was a raw, trembling mess. "Jareth, you have to help me," she whispered, her words punctuated by ragged, muffled sobs. "Something's wrong. The bank sent a letter. The mortgage payment bounced. I don't understand. We had money. I swear we had money." My heart started to pound in my ears, a frantic drumbeat of dread. The serene facade of the family, the one I had so desperately tried to believe in, had finally shattered. I was on the bus, on my way to my second job, and I had to get off at the next stop, the sheer force of her panic making me feel physically ill. I sat on a bench at a bus stop, the city noise a cacophony around me, trying to absorb what she was saying. The money was gone, all of it. The savings she had from my father, the savings they had been building for years, all of it had vanished. She told me about the new van again, this time with a frantic, desperate energy. He told me it was a lease, Jareth, but the letter from the bank, it's a car loan, and it's massive. He didn't just lease it, he bought it. He took out a huge loan against our savings to do it. He said he would pay it back when the business picked up, but it hasn't. We can't even afford food, Jareth. I don't know what to do. Her voice was full of a terrifying helplessness. This wasn't the woman who had always been so strong, so in control. This was a broken person. She was so afraid to even bring up the subject with Oswin because she knew he would get angry. And she was already so tired of the fighting. She said he would just tell her it was a part of the plan and that she needed to be patient. But her patience had run out, and so had the money. I felt a cold rage start to simmer in my gut. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't an unforeseen business expense. This was a lie, a betrayal. He had looked me in the eye, had shown me the investment portfolio, had talked about protecting my mother, and all of it had been a performance. He had promised to take care of her, to protect her, and he had done the exact opposite. He had taken everything. I stood up, my hands clenched into fists, the bus stop bench feeling small and insignificant beneath me. I had to go to her. I had to see this with my own eyes. I told her I was on my way. She tried to tell me not to say that it would only make things worse, but I hung up the phone. I had to know the truth. The journey to their house was long, and every minute of it was filled with the deafening roar of my own anger. I thought about the first time I had met Oswin, after my father had passed away. He had been so kind, so gentle with my mom. He had been a source of comfort, a safe harbor in a storm of grief. I had welcomed him into my life, had grown to love him, to trust him, to see him as a father. And now he was nothing more than a thief. He had stolen my mother's peace of mind, her security, her dignity. He had taken her future, the one she had worked her entire life for, and he had gambled it away on a lie. The feeling of betrayal was a sharp physical pain in my chest, a wound that was growing deeper with every passing moment. When I got to the house, it was dark and silent. The new van was parked in the driveway, a bright, white monument to a massive betrayal. My mom was sitting on the couch, staring at the television, but it was off. She was just sitting there in the dark. The house felt empty, cold, devoid of the fake cheer it had worn so well a few months ago. I sat down next to her, and she leaned her head on my shoulder, the weight of her grief a heavy burden. "I'm so sorry, honey," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "I didn't know. I never saw it coming." I held her tight, the feeling of her small, fragile body making my rage burn brighter. I knew what I had to do. I had to confront him, I had to make him face what he had done, and I had to get her money back. The thought was a small, cold comfort, a promise I made to myself in the silence of that dark room. But the feeling of peace was short-lived, because just as I was about to say something, I heard a car pull up in the driveway, the crunch of tires on gravel, a sound that sent a jolt of panic through my veins. It was Oswin, and he was home. The silence after the car door slammed was more terrifying than any argument. My mother, Maribel, flinched, her body tensing against mine. She straightened up, her face a mask of practiced calm, as if she were preparing for a storm she knew she couldn't outrun. Oswin came into the house, his footsteps heavy and purposeful. The moment he saw me, a flicker of surprise crossed his face, but it was quickly replaced by a feigned cheerfulness. "Jareth, what a surprise! "Why didn't you call?" he asked, his voice a little too loud, a little too jovial. He was trying to act like a normal person, a normal father figure, but I saw the strain in his smile, the way his eyes darted from my face to my mother's, searching for a sign that she had told me everything. I didn't say anything. I just stared at him, my expression blank, a cold, hard stone of accusation. He tried to change the subject, to fill the silence with noise. "I was just at the shop, Jareth. It's a goldmine, I tell you. I've got new clients lining up. This new van is a game changer." He was so proud of it, so proud of the lie he had built. He started to talk about his plans, about how he was going to turn a small mechanic shop into an empire, about how he was going to buy my mother a brand new house and take us all on a vacation to the Bahamas. It was all a fantasy, a cruel, vicious joke. He talked and talked, filling the quiet space with his hollow words, and my mother didn't say a thing. She just sat there, her head bowed, her hands clasped in her lap. She was a silent spectator to her own ruin, and it made my blood run cold. When he finally stopped talking, I broke the silence. "Mom said the mortgage payment bounced." The words hung in the air, heavy and unsaid. The cheerful mask on Oswin's face crumbled. His smile vanished, and his eyes narrowed. "Maribel, what did you tell him?" he asked, his voice low and dangerous. She didn't look up. "It doesn't matter what she told me," I said, my voice steady, my tone unwavering. "What matters is what you did. Where did the money go, Oswin?" His face hardened. "It's none of your business, Jareth. This is between me and your mother. You're just a kid." I stood up, my hands still clenched into fists at my sides. "I'm not a kid, Oswin. I'm a man, and I'm not going to sit here and watch you destroy her. Not anymore." The argument was a whirlwind of rage and denial. He told me I was ungrateful, that he had taken me in, that he had given me a family, that I had no right to question him. He told me that I was being a selfish, spoiled brat, that I couldn't understand the financial struggles of a man who was trying to provide for his family. He threw every insult he could think of at me, but none of it mattered. None of it landed. I just stood there absorbing the lies, watching him spin a web of deceit that was so transparent it was pathetic. My mother finally stood up, her voice a small, terrified squeak. "Please, both of you, just stop." But we couldn't. The dam had broken, and all the years of unspoken anger and resentment came rushing out. He finally stormed out of the house, slamming the door behind him. The silence that was left in his wake was a cold and unforgiving thing. My mother started to cry, a heart-wrenching, choked sound that made my own eyes sting. "I'm so sorry," she sobbed. "I tried to stop him. I tried." I hugged her tight, and I whispered to her that it wasn't her fault. I told her I would take care of it. I wouldn't let him get away with it. I had to find out where the money had gone. I went to the computer, my fingers trembling as I typed in her banking information. I pulled up her accounts, the ones I knew about. They were all empty. I then typed in the password for the joint account, the one I had seen the paperwork for, the one he had shown me. I pulled it up, and my stomach dropped. The balance was gone. It had all been transferred out in one lump sum. The money hadn't just disappeared. It had been moved. I dug a little deeper, looking at the transaction history. I saw the transfer to an account I didn't recognize, an account I didn't know about. I stared at the name on the account, and my heart stopped. It was a name I knew, a name I hadn't heard in a long time. It was the name of his brother, a man he hadn't spoken to in years. He hadn't put the money in a safe place. He hadn't invested it. He hadn't lost it. He had given it away. The realization was a punch to the gut. The lies, the promises, the van, the empty house. It was all for something else entirely. I didn't know what, but I was about to find out. The day of the Christmas call, the one from the cold open, I had been working a double shift at the gas station. My feet ached, my head pounded, and all I wanted was to go home and sleep for a week. But a small part of me held on to a fragile thread of hope. It was a stupid, foolish hope, born of a desperate need to believe in the family I thought I had. I wanted to believe that the last few months had been a mistake, a misunderstanding, a product of my own paranoia. I wanted to believe that Oswin would call me and tell me that everything was fine, that he had a plan, that he was getting everything back. I wanted to believe that Christmas would be normal. I was a fool, a naive, stupid boy. The phone rang and I grabbed it, my heart hammering against my ribs. It was Oswin. I took a deep breath, and I tried to sound cheerful, normal. "Hey, Oswin, what's up?" My voice was too loud, too high, a dead giveaway of my nervousness. He didn't reply immediately. I heard a muffled sound in the background, a television, a distant voice. He sounded busy, preoccupied. "Jareth." "Hey," he said, his voice flat, devoid of any real warmth. "Just calling to see how you're doing." His tone was perfunctory, a formality. It wasn't a call to connect, to talk, to plan. It was just a call to check a box. I felt a cold knot form in my stomach. "I'm good. Just working. I was just wondering about Christmas. Are you guys going to be home? I was thinking about coming down for a few days." I held my breath, waiting for the answer. I was expecting an enthusiastic yes, a warm invitation, a conversation about presents and food and family. Instead, there was a long, awkward silence on the other end of the line. I heard him sigh, a deep, tired sound. "Oh, I wasn't expecting you to come home this year, Jareth." The words hit me with the force of a physical blow. They weren't angry words. They weren't malicious words. They were just casual. He said them as if he were discussing the weather, as if he had simply forgotten to put me on the guest list for Christmas, as if I were a stranger. My hand started to shake, and I felt the blood drain from my face. "What do you mean you weren't expecting me?" I thought we were going to spend Christmas together. Mum was talking about it. My voice was a choked whisper, a pathetic plea for him to take the words back. He laughed, a small hollow sound. "Your mum and I are just going to have a quiet one this year, Jareth. You know, with the way things have been going, we just don't have the money for gifts or food or anything. It's just going to be the two of us. It's better that way. You should just stay where you are with your friends. It's probably for the best." His voice was so calm, so rational. He was explaining his betrayal as if it were a simple logical decision. He had no idea what he was doing to me. He had no idea that I had been saving every single dime for a year to come home and help them. He didn't know that I had already planned out the gifts I was going to buy. He didn't know that I had clung to the idea of a family Christmas as a life raft in a sea of my own loneliness. And he didn't care. The phone call was short after that. He told me to have a Merry Christmas, to be safe, and then he hung up. I stared at the phone, my mind a blank, empty space. My heart felt like it had been scooped out of my chest, leaving a hollow, aching void. The betrayal was so complete, so total that I didn't even know how to process it. He hadn't just stolen my mother's money. He had stolen my hope. He had stolen the one thing I had been looking forward to. He had proven to me in that one callous sentence that I meant nothing to him. I was a footnote in his life, an obligation he had to pretend to care about. I felt a cold, sharp rage start to bubble up inside me, a furious, blinding heat that started in my gut and spread through every inch of my body. He had taken everything from me. It was time for me to take something back. I unlocked my phone, the screen blindingly bright in the dim light of the gas station parking lot. I opened my banking app, then I opened the secure account I had opened for my mum and her family. I had never told them about it. It was where Oswin's retirement fund was. He had put it in my name in case something happened to him. I had forgotten about it. I had never touched it, but now it was a weapon. I scrolled down to the transfer section. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely type. The balance was huge. A lifetime of savings, his future. He had betrayed me, he had betrayed my mother, and now he was going to pay. I typed in a number, and I clicked transfer. The confirmation screen appeared. The money was gone. I had just taken everything from him and he didn't even know it yet. But he would. Oh, he would. The day after the call, the city felt a different color, a different sound. The sun was a pale, indifferent thing, casting long, weak shadows across the cold pavement. The air was a metallic grey, thick with the unsaid. I walked aimlessly, my feet moving on their own accord, my mind a churning cesspool of anger and betrayal. I felt a profound sense of isolation, a deep and unsettling loneliness. The phone call had severed something inside of me. It had cut me off from the one person I had thought I could trust, the one person I had believed in. And now I was adrift. I was a ship without a rudder, lost in a storm I couldn't control. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know who to be. My feet took me to the downtown area, to the seedy part of town where the pawn shops and liquor stores stood side by side, their windows dusty and uninviting. I walked past a few, the sight of a guitar or a television in a window doing nothing for me. I was looking for something else, something I could part with, something that would make this all feel real. I stopped in front of a place called Cal's Quick Cash. The sign above the door, an ugly, flickering neon mess. I stood there for a long time, staring at the window, a strange emptiness settling in my bones. I was thinking about my late father, about the watch he had given me on my 18th birthday. It was a simple, old-fashioned thing, a gold watch with a worn leather band. He had told me to save it, to take care of it, that it was the only thing he had to leave me. It was a piece of him. And now I was considering selling it. The thought was a sharp, physical pain in my chest. It felt like I was betraying him too. He had trusted me with it. He had trusted me to be a man, to do the right thing, to take care of my mother. And here I was, about to sell the only thing he had ever given me. I put my hand in my pocket and felt the cool, hard metal of the watch. I held it tight, the feeling of it grounding me. The irony was not lost on me. Oswin had taken everything from my mother, and now I was considering taking the only thing I had left from my father. We were all thieves, all of us, but a part of me, a dark and angry part, wanted to do it. I wanted to see how it felt. I wanted to experience the full weight of the loss, to feel the pain that my mother was feeling. I wanted to feel something other than just rage. I opened the door to the pawn shop, a small bell jangling overhead. The air inside was thick with the smell of old wood and dust. The man behind the counter, a gaunt, tired-looking man with a face full of lines, looked up. "Can I help you, son?" he asked, his voice a low, raspy sound. I took the watch out of my pocket and laid it on the counter. He picked it up, turned it over in his hand, his eyes a cold, appraising stare. He knew what it was. He knew it was worth something. He knew I was desperate. "This is a nice piece," he said, his voice devoid of any real emotion. "Sentimental value, I'd bet." He looked at me, his eyes asking a question. I didn't answer. He just nodded and went back to looking at the watch. He told me what it was worth, a number so small it was an insult. He was taking advantage of me, and he knew it. A part of me, the angry, desperate part, wanted to just take the money. But another part, a small, quiet voice in the back of my head, told me to stop. It was a small voice, but it was insistent. It was the voice of my father, telling me to be a better man. I took a deep breath, and I looked at the man across the counter. "I can't do it," I said, my voice shaky. He just nodded, his face impassive. "Some things are worth more than money, kid," he said, and he was right. I put the watch back in my pocket and left. I didn't get what I came for, but I did get something else. I got clarity. I realized that I couldn't stoop to his level. I couldn't sell my soul for a few $100s. I had to go to him and I had to make him pay. Not with money, but with the truth. I had to go home and confront him, and I was going to do it that night. I was going to make him face what he had done. And I was going to find out where all the money had gone. The house felt like a tomb. I had arrived in the middle of the afternoon, the pale winter light casting long, mournful shadows across the porch. The door was unlocked, and I let myself in, the sound of the floorboards creaking under my feet, echoing in the silence. The air was cold, a damp, metallic chill that smelled of old dust and betrayal. I found Oswin sitting in his easy chair, the television on, but the volume was off. He was staring at the blank screen, his face a hollow, empty mask. He looked up when he saw me, a flicker of something, maybe guilt, maybe fear, in his eyes. He didn't say anything. He just looked at me, and I looked at him. I sat down on the couch, the worn cushions of it doing nothing to comfort me. I folded my hands in my lap, trying to keep them from shaking. "Oswin," I said, my voice low and steady, "we need to talk." He didn't reply. He just kept staring at the television. I waited. I watched him. I waited for him to look at me, to acknowledge me, to say something. But he just sat there, a statue of a man, a monument to a lie. The silence stretched between us, a tight, thin wire of tension that felt like it was about to snap. I finally broke it. "Where's the money, Oswin? Where did it go? My mom's savings, your savings, all of it. The retirement fund, it's all gone. Why?" My voice was still calm, but there was a tremor in it. He flinched, a small, almost imperceptible movement, but it was there. He finally looked at me, his eyes bloodshot and full of a strange, defeated sadness. "I don't know what you're talking about, Jareth," he said, his voice flat, devoid of any real emotion. "It's gone. The market went bad. It happens. It's not my fault. You can't blame me for the economy." The lie was so transparent, so pathetic, that it made me want to scream. "Don't lie to me, Oswin," I said, my voice rising in a crescendo of anger. I've seen the papers. I've seen the bank statements. The money didn't disappear. You transferred it. I saw the account. You gave it away. Why? Who did you give it to? My voice was shaking now, a violent tremor that I couldn't control. He stood up, his face a mask of furious denial. You had no right to look at that. You had no right to go into my business. You're just a kid. You don't understand. You don't know anything. He was shouting now, his voice a frantic, desperate thing. My mother, Maribel, came into the room, her eyes wide with a mixture of fear and dread. What's going on? Jareth, what are you doing? She asked, her voice a terrified whisper. She looked at me, then at Oswin, her eyes pleading with us to stop. He took everything, Mom, I said, my voice breaking. He didn't lose the money. He gave it away, and he won't tell me why. She looked at Oswin, a look of profound, heartbreaking betrayal on her face. Oswin, is this true? She asked, her voice a small, broken thing. He just stood there, his face a mask of furious denial. It's not what you think, Maribel. It's all for you. It's all part of the plan, he shouted. But the lie was hollow, a pathetic defense against the truth that was staring him in the face. The argument was a maelstrom of anger and tears. He kept shouting and I kept shouting and my mom kept crying. The house, the place that had once felt like a safe haven, was now a battlefield. The tension was so thick you could cut it with a knife. He finally stopped shouting, his body sagging with a sudden devastating exhaustion. He looked at me, and then at my mother, a strange, haunted look in his eyes. He had nothing left to say. He had no more lies to tell. He had been caught, and he knew it. He just sat back down in his easy chair, his head in his hands, defeated. I felt a small, fleeting moment of victory, but it was quickly replaced by a profound, suffocating sadness. The victory felt hollow. He wasn't a villain. He was just a man who had made a terrible mistake, and as I watched him sit there, a broken, defeated shell of a person, I knew that the fight wasn't over. I had to find out what had happened to the money. I had to find out where it had gone. I had to know the truth. The silence after Oswin's defeat was a heavy, suffocating blanket. Maribel went to the kitchen and came back with 2 glasses of water, her hands trembling so much the ice clinked against the sides of the glass. She handed one to me and one to Oswin. He took his but didn't drink. He just stared into the glass, as if it held all the answers he couldn't give. Maribel sat down on the couch, not next to me, not next to him, but in the middle, a physical representation of the chasm that had opened between us. The anger from before had receded, leaving behind a profound emptiness. We were a family, broken and silent, sitting in the ruins of a life we had all built. I was still simmering with questions, but I knew that pushing him now would do nothing. He was a closed book, a locked vault of secrets. I drank my water, the coldness of it a small comfort against the raging heat in my chest. I looked around the room, at the worn furniture, the peeling paint, the chipped coffee table. This house, it was the only home I had ever known. My father had bought it. He had left it to my mother. It was supposed to be a safe place, a sanctuary from the storm of life. But now it felt like a prison. My eyes landed on the old fireplace, the one that had been in the house for as long as I could remember. It was a beautiful old thing, made of stone and brick, with a small hearth in front of it. I remembered sitting in front of it as a kid, watching the fire crackle and pop, listening to my father tell me stories. I felt a strange pull, a small, insistent voice in my head, telling me to look closer. I got up, my footsteps silent in the quiet room. I went over to the fireplace, and I knelt down, pretending to look at the old bricks. My mother watched me, a silent, questioning look on her face. Oswin didn't even look up. He was still staring into his glass of water, 1,000 miles away. I ran my hand along the bottom of the hearth, a small, quiet search for something, anything, and then I felt it. A small gap, a hairline crack between 2 of the stone tiles. I pushed on it, and the stone moved. I pushed again and it slid back, revealing a small, dark space. I reached inside, my fingers fumbling for something in the gloom, and then I felt it. A small, thin packet of papers. I pulled them out, the rustling sound of the paper a loud intrusion in the silent room. I stood up, and I walked back to the couch, the packet of papers in my hand. My mother's eyes were wide with a growing dread. Oswin finally looked up, his eyes a wild, panicked thing. He lunged for me, a sudden, desperate movement. "Give me that, Jareth. It's none of your business," he shouted, his voice a frantic, terrified thing. But I was faster. I held the papers away from him, my body a shield between him and my mother. I didn't know what I was looking at, but I knew it was important. I knew it was the reason for all the lies, all the secrets. I looked at the papers, and I saw a seal, a logo, and a series of numbers. I saw my mother's name, and I saw Oswin's name, and then I saw the word mortgage. I looked at the packet, a sinking, devastating feeling settling in my stomach. It wasn't just a simple mortgage, it was a second mortgage. He had taken a second loan out against the house, the very house that was supposed to be my mother's. He had used her inheritance, her home, as a weapon against her. I looked at Oswin, and his face was a mask of defeat, of shame. He just stood there, his hands hanging uselessly at his sides, his body a slumped, broken thing. He had nothing left to hide. He had been caught, and he knew it. And in that moment I realized that he wasn't a villain. He was a gambler. A desperate, addicted man who had gambled away everything he had ever been given, and everything he had ever been entrusted with. He had gambled away his family, his future, his dignity, and now he had nothing left. But the fight wasn't over. It had only just begun. I was going to get a lawyer. The meeting with the lawyer was surreal. I sat in a sleek, modern office, a world away from the dusty, broken-down house I had just left. The lawyer's name was Boone, a family friend from way back, and he was the one who had helped my late father set up the trust fund for me. He was a calm, quiet man, with a face that looked like it had seen every kind of human misery, and still managed to remain unjaded. I laid the papers on his desk, the mortgage documents and the bank statements. I told him everything, from the new van to the secret account, from the Christmas call to the second mortgage. I didn't leave anything out. I told him about the lies, the anger, the betrayal, the fear in my mother's eyes. He listened, his face a neutral mask of professional distance. His eyes, however, were full of a deep, silent understanding. When I was done, he sat back in his chair, his hands clasped behind his head. He was a thinking man, and I watched him, a slow, agonizing silence stretching between us. He finally leaned forward, his elbows on the desk. "Jareth," he said, his voice low and serious, "what Oswin has done is more than just a betrayal. It's a crime. He has committed fraud. He has used your mother's property as a collateral for a loan she had no knowledge of, and he has used her savings to fund his own." "What did you say it was? A gambling addiction?" I nodded, my throat tight with emotion. "He's a good man, Boone," I said, the words feeling foreign in my mouth. I don't want to see him go to jail." Boone just nodded. "I understand. But we have to look at this from a different perspective. We have to look at this from your mother's perspective. What has he done to her? He has put her home at risk. He has stolen her financial security. He has taken her peace of mind." He then pulled out a folder from a drawer and opened it. He slid a piece of paper across the desk to me. It was the trust fund, the one my father had set up for me. I had forgotten about it. I had been so caught up in the present that I had forgotten about the past, about the legacy my father had left me. Boone pointed to a paragraph on the document. "Your father, Jareth, was a very smart man. He knew that things like this could happen. He knew that your mother was a good but trusting woman. He set this up so that you would have the power to intervene. It gives you the legal authority to reclaim your mother's financial assets in the event of a threat to her well-being. It gives you the power to seize any and all of her assets and place them in a safe, secure place, without her consent if necessary." I stared at the document, a sense of shock and awe settling in my bones. My father had been a silent guardian, a protector from beyond the grave. Boone explained the plan. We could file a civil suit. We could go after Oswin's retirement fund. We could legally reclaim the money he had stolen from my mother. It was a simple, elegant plan. A legal move that would put everything back in its rightful place. But it came with a heavy price. It would mean the end of my family. It would mean that Oswin would lose everything he had ever worked for. It would mean that my mother would lose the man she loved. I looked at the papers, at the plan that was laid out in black and white, and I felt a profound sense of loneliness. I had the power to save my mother, but it meant destroying the man who had raised me, the man my mother loved. The choice was mine, and I had to make it. The weight of it was suffocating. I didn't know what to do. Christmas Day came, and with it a silence that was more profound than any argument. The house was cold and empty. The fake tree stood in the corner, a sad and pathetic thing, its lights unlit. The house smelled of old dust and regret, a hollow, bitter scent. Maribel was a ghost in her own home. She walked around in a daze, her eyes blank, her body a hunched and defeated thing. Oswin was gone. He had left the house the night before, after the last of our shouting matches. He had left a note, a pathetic, scribbled thing that said he needed to think. He was a coward. He couldn't face what he had done. He couldn't face the consequences of his actions. He had run away, and he had left my mother to deal with the ruins of her life. I sat with her on the couch, the same couch where we had sat on that first night, the night I found her in the dark. I held her hand, the skin of it paper-thin and cold. "Mum," I said, my voice a small, quiet thing. "We have to do something." She just shook her head, a slow, weary movement. "I don't know what to do, Jareth. I'm so tired. I'm just so tired." She was right. She was exhausted. She had been carrying the weight of his secrets for years, and now the burden had finally broken her. I told her about the trust fund, about the legal advice I had gotten from Boone. I told her that we could get the money back. I told her that we could get her life back. I told her that there was a way out of this. But she just looked at me, her eyes full of a strange, defeated sadness. "I can't do that to him, Jareth," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "I love him. He's a good man. He just makes bad choices." The words were a dagger to my heart. He was a good man? After all he had done? After all he had put her through? After he had stolen her life and her future and her dignity? How could she still love him? How could she still defend him? I felt a wave of anger, a furious, blinding heat that started in my gut. "Mum, he is not a good man. A good man doesn't do this. A good man doesn't gamble away his wife's life savings. A good man doesn't put his wife's home at risk." My voice was rising and she flinched, a small, pained movement. I took a deep breath and I tried to calm down. I had to be strong for her. I had to be her rock. "Mum, I'm going to do this for you. I'm going to get the money back. I'm going to do what's right." She just looked at me, a silent, heartbroken plea in her eyes. "Please, Jareth, just leave it alone. Let's just move on. Let's just forget it." I couldn't forget it. I couldn't just leave it alone. I had to do something. I had to fight for her. I had to be the man my father had wanted me to be. I had to be the man who protected her. I had to do what was right, even if it meant hurting her. I stood up, and I went to the window. The world outside was a cold, desolate place. The streetlights were on, casting long, lonely shadows on the empty street. I felt a profound sense of isolation, a deep and unsettling loneliness. I was alone in this fight. I was alone in this battle for my mother's life, and I was going to do it alone. I was going to do what was right, even if it meant breaking my family. I had to be the one who made the hard choice, and I had to make it now. I had to get the money back, and I was going to start by getting a hold of Boone again. He came back 3 days after Christmas. The snow had started to fall, a soft white blanket covering the ugliness of the world. He came into the house, and he looked like a broken man. His shoulders were slumped, his eyes were red and swollen, and his face was a mask of utter defeat. He didn't say a word. He just sat down on the easy chair, the same chair he had sat in when he had shown me the fake investment portfolio, the same chair he had sat in when he had lied to me. He just sat there, and he stared at the television, which was off, his face a hollow, empty thing. My mother, Maribel, came into the room. She looked at him, and her eyes filled with tears. She didn't say anything. She just sat down on the couch and she started to cry, a small, heartbroken sound. I stood by the door, my arms crossed over my chest, a silent observer to a tragedy I had no control over. He finally looked at us, his eyes a haunted, distant thing. "I'm sorry," he whispered, his voice a broken, defeated sound. The two words, so simple, so meaningless, were the dam that finally broke. He started to talk, and the words came pouring out of him like a flood, a torrent of guilt and shame and regret. He told us everything. He told us about the gambling addiction he had been hiding for years, a dark and insidious secret that had been eating away at his soul. He told us that it started small, a few dollars here and there, a few bets on a game. But then it grew. It became a monster, a ravenous beast that demanded more and more. It consumed everything. His money, his time, his dignity. He had taken a second mortgage on the house to pay off his debts. He had taken my mother's savings. He had taken the money from the retirement fund. He had taken everything. He told us about his brother, the man whose name I had seen on the bank account. He was a bookie, a loan shark, a man who had been feeding Oswin's addiction for years. He had been blackmailed, threatened, and extorted. He had been a prisoner to his own weakness, and he had done terrible things to people he loved, all for the sake of the game. He wasn't a villain. He was a victim, a man who had been consumed by a dark and terrible disease. He cried, a choked, defeated sound that was more painful to hear than any of his shouting. He told us that he had tried to stop. He had tried to get help, but the addiction was a powerful, all-consuming force. It was a monster that lived inside of him, a monster that he couldn't control. My mother was sobbing now, a deep, heartbroken sound. She went to him, and she held him, her body a small, comforting thing against his slumped and broken form. She didn't say anything, she just held him, and she let him cry. I stood there, watching them, my mind a storm of conflicting emotions. The anger was still there, but it was now laced with a strange, confusing sadness. He wasn't a monster, he was just a sick man. He was a man who had made a terrible mistake, and he had paid a terrible price for it. I felt a profound sense of loneliness. I had been so sure I was fighting a villain, and I had been wrong. I had been fighting a ghost, a broken man who was lost in his own private hell. I didn't know what to do. The battle I had been so ready to fight was over, and I had nothing left. The money, the trust fund, the legal advice, it all seemed so meaningless now. The money was gone, his future was gone, my mother's peace of mind was gone, and I didn't know how to fix it. The days that followed Oswin's confession were a blur of quiet misery. The house was no longer a battlefield, it was a hospital, a place of silent, aching grief. My mother Maribel had a strange, detached kind of love for Oswin now. It wasn't the unconditional, hopeful love she had before. It was a fragile, wounded love, a love born of a shared trauma. She would sit with him in the evenings, her hand on his shoulder, and she would tell him that it was going to be okay, but I could see the doubt in her eyes. I could see the fear that was still lurking just beneath the surface. Oswin was a ghost. He didn't eat, he didn't talk. He just sat there, a hollow, defeated shell of a person. He was a man who had nothing left to lose, and it was a terrifying thing to see. I was a man on a mission. The lawyer, Boone, had been waiting for me to give him the go-ahead. I had all the paperwork. I had the legal right to take everything from Oswin. I could legally seize his retirement fund. I could get the money back for my mother. I could be her hero. I could be the man who saved her. But I couldn't do it. I was frozen. I was a man on a cliff, with a choice between two equally terrifying options. I could go through with it and save my mother, but I would ruin the man who had raised me, the man my mother still loved. I would make her choose between her son and her husband, or I could do nothing, and I would be the coward who stood by and watched his mother lose everything. The choice was a heavy, suffocating burden, and I couldn't decide. I went to see my girlfriend Cassidy. She was a kind, quiet girl with a fierce intelligence, and she was the only person I felt I could be honest with. We sat in her small apartment, a quiet, peaceful place that felt a million miles away from the chaos of my life. I told her everything. I told her about the confession, about Oswin's gambling addiction, about the terrible choice I had to make. She listened, her face a thoughtful, silent thing. When I was done, she didn't say anything. She just went to her kitchen and came back with a cup of tea. She handed it to me. "Jareth," she said, her voice a small, quiet thing, "you're not a monster for wanting to save your mother. And you're not a coward for wanting to save the man she loves. You're just human. You're in a terrible situation and you have to make a terrible choice." She sat down on the couch next to me and she took my hand. "My father had a gambling problem," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "He lost everything. He lost his business. He lost his home. He lost his family. And he kept doing it over and over because he couldn't stop. It's a disease, Jareth. It's a sickness. And a man can't fight a disease alone. He needs help. He needs family. He needs love. But sometimes, love isn't enough. Sometimes you have to cut the cancer out, even if it hurts." Her words were a sharp, painful truth. She wasn't telling me what to do, she was just giving me a new perspective. She was telling me that sometimes love wasn't enough. Sometimes you had to be cruel to be kind. I looked at her, and I saw the strength in her eyes, the courage she had to face a painful truth. She was right. I couldn't just stand by and watch my mother lose everything. I had to do something. I left her apartment a new man. I was still scared. I was still terrified of the choice I had to make. But now I had a purpose. I had a mission. I had to do what was right, even if it meant destroying my family. I had to make the hard choice. I had to be a man. I had to go to the bank, and I had to sign the papers. I was going to do it. I was going to get the money back. And I was going to do it for my mother. I was going to be her hero, and I was going to live with the consequences, no matter how terrible they were. I was going to do it now. I went to the bank the next morning. The building was a cold, imposing thing, all marble and glass and polished wood. It felt like a monument to a world that was a million miles away from the chaos and despair of my life. I walked inside, and the air was a strange, sterile thing, smelling of money and power and other people's secrets. I sat down with a bank manager, a quiet, professional man with a face that looked like it had been carved from stone. I laid the papers on his desk, the legal documents, the trust fund, the bank statements. I told him what I wanted to do. I told him I wanted to transfer the funds from Oswin's retirement account to an account in my mother's name. I didn't say anything else. I didn't need to. He looked at the papers, and he looked at me, a silent, appraising stare. He saw the truth in my eyes, the pain, the anger, the love. He looked over the documents, verifying everything. He asked me a few questions, his voice a low, impersonal sound. He asked me if I was sure. He asked me if I understood the consequences. He asked me if I had talked to my mother. I just nodded. I didn't trust myself to speak. I was afraid that if I opened my mouth, a flood of emotion would come pouring out. I was a dam about to burst, a river about to overflow. He finally nodded, a small, almost imperceptible movement. He slid a piece of paper across the desk to me. It was the final document, the one that would make it all real, the one that would change everything, the one that would destroy the man who had raised me, and save the woman who had given me life. The pen felt heavy in my hand, a leaden, impossible thing. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely hold it. I took a deep breath, and I looked at the signature line. It felt like I was signing my own name on a death warrant. I thought about Oswin, about the man who had taught me how to change a tire, about the man who had coached my little league team, about the man who had taught me how to fish. I thought about the good times, the quiet moments of love and respect. I thought about the way he had held my mother, the way he had protected her, the way he had tried to be a father to me. And then I thought about the lie, the secret account, the second mortgage, the Christmas call, the words "I wasn't expecting you to come home." The thought was a cold, sharp thing, a blade of ice in my heart. He had left me no choice. He had betrayed us. He had put my mother's life at risk. He had left me with no other option. I took a deep breath, and I closed my eyes. I signed the paper, the scratch of the pen a loud, final sound in the silent room. The manager took the paper, and he put it in a file. He didn't say anything. He didn't need to. He just looked at me, a silent, knowing stare. I stood up, and I walked out of the bank, the doors of it closing behind me with a quiet thud. I was alone. I had done it. I had made the choice. I had saved my mother, but I had destroyed my family. I had taken a man's future, his security, his dignity. I had taken everything he had ever worked for. I had done what was right, but it didn't feel right. It felt terrible. It felt like a punch to the gut. It felt like I had just signed away my own peace of mind. I didn't know what would happen next, but I knew that whatever it was going to be bad. The fallout was swifter than a summer storm. I got a text message from my mother, a frantic, half-gibberish thing that was more a scream than a message. It said, "Jareth, what did you do? The bank called. They said his account is empty. They said you did it." My heart felt like it had been encased in a block of ice. I didn't reply. I just started walking. I walked for hours, my body a silent, mechanical thing, my mind a blank, empty space. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew I couldn't go home. I couldn't face her. I couldn't face him. I couldn't face what I had done. The world around me was a blur of colors and sounds, a cacophony of life that felt alien and strange to me. I was a ghost, a wanderer, a man who had done a terrible thing, and who now had to live with the consequences. I got a call from Oswin. I didn't answer. He called again, and again, and again. I let them all go to voicemail. I didn't want to hear his voice. I didn't want to hear his anger, his rage, his hurt. I didn't want to hear him call me a monster. I was a monster. He had given me a family. He had given me a home. He had given me a life, and I had taken everything from him. I had destroyed him. A part of me, a small, dark part, felt a strange kind of satisfaction. He had betrayed us, and he had paid the price. But the rest of me, the human part, felt a crushing, devastating guilt. The victory was hollow. The satisfaction was a lie. The price was too high. I finally went home. The house was quiet, too quiet. I walked inside, and my mother was sitting on the couch, her face a pale, strained thing. She didn't look at me. She just stared at the wall. Oswin was in the easy chair, his head in his hands. He looked old. He looked tired. He looked broken. He looked up when he saw me, and there was no anger in his eyes. There was no rage. There was just a profound, devastating sadness. Jareth, he whispered, his voice a broken, defeated sound. He stood up and he walked to the window. He looked out at the falling snow, at the quiet, peaceful world outside. "Why?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. "Why did you do this?" I didn't answer. I couldn't. The words were a bitter, metallic taste in my mouth. I had no answer. My mother finally spoke. "He told me everything, Jareth," she said, her voice a small, quiet thing. "He told me about the addiction. He told me about the debts. He told me about everything." She looked at me, and her eyes were full of a strange, confusing mixture of gratitude and hurt. She was grateful I had saved her, but she was hurt that I had hurt him. I had done a terrible thing, and I had done it for her, and she was grateful, but she was not happy. I had made a choice that had saved her, but that had also broken her heart. I had won the battle, but I had lost the war. The victory felt hollow, the triumph felt like a defeat. The man who had raised me, the man my mother loved, was a defeated, broken thing, and I was the one who had done it. I had to live with that, and I had to live with the fact that my mother would never look at me the same way again. I had to live with the fact that I had saved her, but I had also lost her. 6 months passed, a slow, agonizing blur of time. The house was no longer a tomb or a hospital. It was a ghost of what it had once been. Oswin was in a support group, a quiet, defeated man who spent his days in a world of silence and regret. My mother, Maribel, was a new person. She was in control of her finances. She had started a small business, a catering company, and she was slowly, painstakingly, building a new life for herself. The money I had recovered had gone to her. It had been her second chance. It was her future. She was grateful to me. She told me so, in small, quiet ways. A look, a touch, a whispered thank you, but she never fully looked me in the eye. A part of her was still angry. A part of her was still hurt. A part of her was still in love with the man I had destroyed. I was her helper. I was her silent partner. I would help her with her orders. I would help her with her inventory. I would help her with her paperwork. I would do anything she asked. It was my way of atoning for what I had done, for the terrible choice I had made. It was my way of trying to earn back her trust, her love, her respect. I had to do what was right, and I had to do it quiet. I had to be a silent guardian, a protector from the shadows. I had to be the man who saved her, but I couldn't be the man who took credit for it. The man who took credit for it was the man who had destroyed her family. I didn't want to be that man. Oswin and I were like two ships passing in the night. We lived in the same house, but we lived in different worlds. We didn't talk, we didn't look at each other, we just existed. He was a defeated man. He had lost everything, his pride, his dignity, his security. But he had a second chance. He was in recovery. He was a man who had hit rock bottom, and who was now slowly, painstakingly, climbing his way back up. I didn't hate him anymore. I felt a strange, confusing mixture of pity and respect. He had made a terrible mistake, and he had paid for it. And now he was a new man. He was a man who was trying to be better. He was a man who was trying to be a better person. Christmas came again. It was a cold, quiet night. The house was decorated, but it was a quiet, tasteful kind of decoration. There was no fake tree, no cheap ornaments, just a small, simple pine tree in the corner, its branches lit with a string of simple white lights. The air was filled with the smell of my mother's baking and the soft, quiet sound of the television. Oswin and my mother were sitting on the couch, and he had his arm around her. She was leaning her head on his shoulder, and she was smiling. It was a real smile, a true, happy smile. It was the first time I had seen her truly happy in a long, long time. I was sitting in my father's old chair, and I was just watching them. I was watching them be a family, a broken, flawed, and beautiful thing. Oswin looked up and he saw me. He didn't say anything, he just looked at me, a long, silent stare, and in his eyes, I saw something new. I saw gratitude. He was grateful to me. He was grateful that I had done what he couldn't do. He was grateful that I had saved his family. He was grateful that I had saved his life. And in that moment I realized that I had made the right choice. I had destroyed the man he was, but I had saved the man he was meant to be. I had made a terrible choice, but it had led to a new beginning. I had saved my family, and I had saved my life. And I knew in that moment that everything was going to be okay. The Christmas I had been waiting for was finally here.